welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about how to moderate an author panel. So recently I just did the Southeastern Young Adult Book Festival and I was able to moderate panels. This is my second year doing it, and once again I had an absolute blast. I keep getting a lot of compliments on my moderating style and how I go about moderating, so I decided to make a video on it. So the first thing to do when you get invited to moderate a panel is to do your research on the authors. The way that I usually go about this is I check Twitter if they have Twitter. That's actually the first place I check. Most people would check websites first. I check Twitter first. You get more of a feel for their actual personality of the author. Then after that, I check their website, and I usually use parts of the bio on their website for their introduction because that's pretty much their standard bio that everybody knows them by. Also, among doing research for your panels, if you have time, I would suggest reading the books of the authors on your panel, or at least being familiar with their stories. Next is to be familiar with your panel topic. Every single panel that you do, most of the time, is going to have a different overarching theme. For example, this past festival, one of the panels I was on is Talk Nerdy to Me. So for panel research, I didn't have to do much because I'm pretty knowledgeable about fan culture and fandoms and things like that. However, if I were going to do a panel that I wasn't super familiar on, I would Google the topics, look at different articles and different topics and different videos around this panel topic just to familiarize yourself with it so you can form your questions for your panel. The next step would be to actually create your questions. I highly suggest creating more questions than you need. Luckily, you will leave time at the end of the panel for audience questions, but always have more questions than you need in case your audience doesn't have that many questions. You don't want to end your panel too short. Be sure to ask specific questions about the panel, as well as some other general questions. I find this works best because you can kind of gauge your crowd and see if they are interested in the specific panel topics, and if they're not, you can always switch into one or two more general reading and writing questions. Be sure to promote whatever book festival that you are moderating on social media. It's really, really nice to do. It's not always required, but it is the nice thing to do to try to get more information out there about this book festival that you'll be attending, because if you're attending it, you should like it and want people to come to it. On the day of, you want to make sure that you are dressed nice and presentable. You want to look your best. You want to look cute. You are meeting the authors that you are probably fans of yourself. And even if you aren't fans of their specific work, you always want to put your best foot forward, especially when speaking in front of a crowd and being at an event that you were invited to come to. You don't want to show up to moderate a panel in your sweatpants and your t-shirt. Always dress up, even if it's not required. Be early. To be on time is late, and to be late is just don't do it. So be early. I suggest getting there between 10 to 20 minutes early, even more so if you are unfamiliar with the area that you're going to, because you don't want to get lost. There's really no excuse to be late to these events. These events run on a very specific timetable, and you want to make sure that you're able to get there early to introduce yourself to your authors and make sure you know where you're going. On the actual day of your panel, you are going to introduce yourself to your authors first and foremost. You want to tell them who you are and give them a brief overview of the panel. Most authors don't have any idea what they're getting into on the actual day of the panel, so make sure you tell them what it's all about so they can start to formulate that in their heads. So when it's actually time to start the panel, you're going to let everybody in the room know that it is time to get started. You're going to introduce the panel, the name of the panel, in case anybody's in the wrong room. You're going to introduce yourself, and then you're going to ask everyone to silence their phones. I know most events will let their moderators know to tell everybody to silence their phones, but it's a very good rule of thumb just to let the audience know to silence their phones. You don't want someone's phone ringing in the middle of authors trying to talk. because it's rude. Next, you are going to introduce the authors. What I usually do is I will introduce them, I will give them their name, maybe something fun that I've learned about them doing my research, and then you will say their key titles of work. So if you have an author that has 30 books, don't stand up there saying all 30 books because that'll take way too long. Say maybe 2 or 3 of them at most and then move on. So after you introduce all your authors, what I like to do is have all the authors pitch their own works. So have them give their elevator pitch of their work and who they are, because trust me, they're going to give a better pitch of their books than you are, because they've practiced it and they've worked on it and they know exactly what to say when someone says, "Hey, what's your book about?" Now it's time to ask your questions. I suggest having them already on note cards or even your phone, but make sure you have your questions ready to go when it's time to ask your questions. Let conversation develop naturally between your authors. It's gonna happen, and that's what you want to happen. Your goal as a moderator is to ask such good questions that the authors start talking amongst themselves and to the audience. You don't want it to be just the questions. You want the author's insight and their knowledge and their opinions, not to just answer the questions yes or no. During your panel, make sure you are keeping an eye on time, whether that be with your phone or your watch. It's very important that panels start and end on time to keep the convention running as a whole. Everything is planned out throughout the day, and you don't want to be that one room who is gone 15 minutes over and you're having people have to wait in the hallway or wait somewhere while they're waiting for you to finish. Leave 15 minutes for questions. It might seem like a lot, especially if your panel is only 45 minutes to an hour. 15 minutes for questions, I highly suggest. Usually at book festivals, everyone there is a reader and they want to ask questions of their favorite authors. And what I've typically found is it takes about 5 minutes per question. If it's a good question, sometimes it's even longer. But for every author on the panel to give their opinion and answer it naturally, it's gonna take about 5 minutes. So with only leaving 15 minutes for audience questions, typically that's only about 3 questions. And when there is about 3 to 5 minutes left, you wanna go ahead and in the panel, you're gonna call it there. You're gonna thank the audience for listening. And then you're gonna have everybody clap for your authors, ask for one more round of applause. It's always nice to send the authors off with a applause, and then you're done. That's the end of the panel. Now, depending on what convention you are working with, you might have to be the person that's directing your authors on where to go next. So then you'll gather your authors and you'll move on to the next part of the festival or the next thing you are doing. And after the panel, it's a great time to personally thank the authors that were on your panel. Tell them how much it meant to you that you were on your panel and that they were engaged in answering questions. It's just nice practice to thank people. Okay guys, that is all I have for you today. Join us this Sunday, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time for our normal live chat. I hope to see you guys there. Bye.